What's up guys, Mixed by Jocelyn here, back with another video, and today I got a heater for you. I'm going to be doing a full mix breakdown on my mix for Charlie Sloth's new tune, Sleep, featuring Gigs and Mazza L20. Let's go. Boom! Okay guys, so as I said in the video, we're going to be doing a mix breakdown of Charlie Sloth's new tune Sleep featuring Gigs and Mazza L20.
AKs, Glocks, we ain't on games. Waste man, you can't be saved. Tommy Ghost, you ain't no Canaan. Bow, bow, a flock of.
I was gassed to be a part of this tune. Obviously, I've worked with Charlie for years and years now. I was his recording engineer for a long time, and I've done you know, loads of mixing for him over the years as well. But recently he's got back into it. He started to release music again. He shouted me. I did one recently. I have that pop up on the screen, and this one came up and I was super gassed because obviously I've been working in the UK rap scene for a long time, and I've always wanted to work on a Gigs tune. It finally came my way. I finally got my opportunity, and yeah, I wasn't gonna let this one slip. So yeah, this is #1 on the YouTube charts currently, or at the time of the release of this video, which is amazing. And yeah, Mazza as well, like new guy on the block. He's fucking sick. I love his tone. And obviously, yeah, we've got a Charlie Sloth production, kind of like a reimagination of a classic grime tune as well. So yeah, everything about it was just like super exciting. It seems to be doing its thing at the moment. It's being very well responded to. So I text Charlie, I said, yo bro, are you cool if I do a mix breakdown for this for everyone? I think people will really appreciate it. He said boom, no problem. So yeah, here we are. So I'm going to get this turned around quite quickly because I really want you guys to see this. But essentially I'm just going to walk you through the project and the sort of steps and the process that we went through. So a bit of history. Before I started this official mix, I did what is called like a rough mix for Charlie, as he'd had the Mazza verse but he hadn't got the Gigs verse yet, and he wanted to get something solid to get Gigs inspired. So I did sort of like a rough mix, got it to a certain place, and then I got sent the final stems. But between then and there, sort of the tune changed quite a lot. There wasn't even a hook, so we've created this hook, and there was also some added production added. So you know, we were constantly developing the song from start to finish. But anyway, enough talking. Let's get into what you want. Let's get into what you came here to see, and let's have a look at the project. So I have the project loaded up here. This is literally what I haven't done anything to it. I haven't restructured it. This is as what it looked like when I did the final print, the final bounce of the record. And yeah, so let's go through it all. So basically we have all of the drum stems loaded up in here for you guys. You know, if you guys watch my videos, you won't be this won't be new to you, sort of like the layout and the style in which I mix my songs and sort of run them through my template. On that note, my template is actually available. This exact template, obviously I built this out a little bit more for them as I've mixed it, but the template that I start all my mixes on is available on my site. I'll have that link below. So that's my mixing template. It's up for like $19.99. It's a fucking steal. Grab that. It obviously supports me, it helps the channel out, and you know, you guys are getting an asset that I use for my mixing. I also have a recording template on there for $9.99, which is the recording template I use as well. So yeah, check those out. They'll be linked below. But anyway, so back to the template, and then we have obviously the instrumentals. We've got a bunch of different basses here, and then we have like the cello and the sample, stuff like that. I'm gonna go through this all in detail. Then we have the vocals. So the vocals are basically split into one bus, and then we have two separate buses internally in that bus with Mazza and Gigs for their separate parts, and then we have Charlie Sloth's like taglines that he likes to have included as well, just so I have like one centralized place where I can control the volume and do sort of like any like final little boost that I think overall the vocals need at the end. But we'll get into that anyway. So As you can see here, I have my master chain on. They used my master for this mix as well. They don't always do that, but Charlie said he liked it. He said it sounded great. Obviously, I'll always make sure that I'm mastering to standards for like releasing on DSPs and stuff like that, so that they can always be used. But occasionally people are like, oh, can you just send it to me, you know, with the mix, so I can, and I'll send it to a different mastering engineer like that they might use, which is fine either way. But they've used my master here, so this is actually a mix and master. The way that I like to work is when I start my project, I'll tend to have all of this turned on and I'll leave God Particle on. Now, the reason why I leave God Particle on, I've spoke about this in the past, is I like to mix into my limiter. It will change and sometimes it gets turned off, sometimes I use a different limiter, but I use God Particle because I like the indication meters for my systems. Like when I'm mixing into my drums, I know if I'm hitting a certain point, then it's going to be right, it's at the right level, everything's going to be hitting in the right place. And obviously, you know, for me, in my head, if you're not mixing into a limiter, it's a bit, I don't like it, because you are essentially going to be mixing, getting all these dynamics, getting all this space, and then trying to put a limiter on, and then, you know, that's going to change the sound, it's going to squash the sound, and it's always going to have a limiter on. So in my head, I may as well just have that limiter on, mix into it, so then I know, you know, by the time the song comes, limiter or not, it sounds good. Do you see what I'm saying? And it's at the right sort of volume as well. So that's kind of my ethos with it. It's something that I've adapted from Jason Joshua, an amazing engineer, and his style. That's his plugin as well. So shout out Jason Joshua. But so that's what it would look like, but we're going to keep everything on as it is, because we're not going to do essentially like a mix from start to scratch. We're just going to do a breakdown of what I did. So let's have a quick listen to the song and how it stands now, and you know what it sounds like in my DAW that was and the record that was released. I'll just play it from we'll play it from the beginning of the hook.
Last night did I get no sleep?
One tweet can make you sleep.
No rest for the wicked, I get no sleep.
Red dots, you know them sleep.
Don't talk on me name, I'm plumb to sleep.
Waste man, you can't be sleep.
Stay woke on the streets, my bro, don't sleep. Hey, yo, sleep. Hey, Charlie Sloth, play the beat. I had the ops, I got it on repeat. You know L20 run the streets. Like the corner shop, I got sweets. If I
cool, so to me, it sounds great. It sounds aggressive. It sounds punchy. There was a few things in terms of like recalls we had with between like Charlie and gigs and stuff like that, where they wanted to take it in a slightly different direction with like the aggression and stuff like that, which wouldn't have been my personal go-to. But at the end of the day, this is a good tip for all you guys out there, especially if you're working with clients. The client is always right. It's their song, it's their vision. You got to achieve what they want. I can obviously help guide them, give them a version that I like, you know, and a version that they like. That's always a good tip. Like, don't just send one version. This is something that I picked up off of a great friend of mine, Sean D, who's an amazing mix engineer here in the UK. You know, he'll always send like 2 to 3 versions. He'll send one that's like basically the rough but just enhanced and louder, one that's really full his vision, him going crazy, being creative, doing everything that he wants to do, and then 2 and in between of those 2 mixes. And then you're giving the client like options, you're showing them your vision, you're giving them what they want, and you know they're going to be super confident and happy in that. It's a little bit extra work, but that's why, you know, those extra things really do make the difference, and you know, carry the song and give you that edge as an engineer. Do you know what I mean? Because you're giving the client like more than what he asked for and more than what he needs or she needs. So yeah, anyway, let's have a look at the drums. So the drums are on this song are actually super simple. So obviously the main driving force is just this like 4 to the floor kick here. Well, it's not quite 4 to the floor, but it's very repetitive. Jersey kick, I guess you'd call it. Yeah, that's literally like in the verses and the hooks. That's all that's driving the song, other than like, you know, that small perk that you hear there, which I'll play quickly. Random sound. And that's it. Other than that, there's no snares, there's no hats, there's nothing. It's just that Jersey style kick. And then in the breakdowns, you have this other section which is a bit more sort of like spread out. But again, it's very simple. It's just kick, couple of snares, and some hats and some crashes. So in terms of the percussion, I didn't have much to go off of because those sections only come in 3 times, once at the beginning, middle and end. So I mean, really with the kick, I needed it to sort of like punch through and drive a lot through the song. So I've done a small bit of EQ in here. I've just used the Pro Q. I've just used the channel EQ, just obviously for it being fast and just grabbing it. Normally I would use the Pro Q4 now. This needs updating. I started mixing this song before I put the Pro Q4 on my template. And then I guess this is doing quite a bit of heavy lifting. The Gold Clip by Schwab Digital. This is really like clipping the sound, adding a lot of like saturation, and then we have like the Lavery Gold emulation bringing saturation and harmonics to it. And then I've just run that on a mix. So I've done quite a bit of clipping but then mixed it down, so it's not like just clipping, like it's a blend of the 2 signals, which I'll A/B for you. You can hear when it's on, it's really bringing that like top end and just that cutting, that aggression, and which is gonna like really help it pop through the mix. And then we have a small bit of compression here as well. As you can see, super loose, super light. It's just sort of controlling those peaks and just giving it a bit more of a consistent sound. And I'm using it to sculpt as well. So I've done a really slow attack, letting the transient cut through, but a fast release, just because I wanted it to punch back and give it a bit of a pulsating feel. Just again, all about like helping it cut through the mix. That's my idea with it anyway. And then we have this parallel, but that I've turned that on by accident. That actually was off and should have stayed off. And then this is basically a routing signal, so I don't think I'm using it, but it's basically just a sidechain signal which I just have set up on my bus at all times, just in case I need to, you know, sidechain to multiple things, or it's just useful to have. I've had it set up for a long time, but essentially, you know, that's what I've done there. And then when you listen to it in context with the mix, it really does cut through.
What's 100 bag? I want 100 mil, bro. Can't sleep, but I'd love to chill till I've got a mansion like Uncle Phil on the back wheel, cause I love the thrill. Got a buy skates cause I love to drill. I got little hits with big
punching through. I actually had it cutting through quite a bit more at first, but that was one of the notes from the guys. They felt it was a little bit overbearing, and they wanted it pulled back. But you know, maybe I like my kicks. I would have had it louder, but you know, as I said, client's always right, so they've got to get what's done. A very similar process for this kick. I didn't want to go too far away from it.
Glocks, we on games.
It sounded right. It was a very different sounding kick. It's much more open. I haven't really touched it at all on the EQ. You know, that's one thing I will say is, you know, if it doesn't need it, don't do anything to it. You know, you don't need to just add stuff. Like a lot of it is clip gain, leveling, you know, and just, you know, small bits of EQ, tidying up, like, you know, just getting rid of like frequencies that don't necessarily need to be there. And that's all I've done here. So, you know, you've got this rim shot, just a small EQ cut there, just removing some frequencies. It will be the same across the board, like, you know, all of these sounds, nothing crazy, just bits of EQ. That's all it is. That's literally all I've done. On the hats, I've just done a little boost around 10k just to give it a bit of a sheen. And then that is all running into my drum bus, which is special to me. I feel like this is something that gives me a little bit of an edge. I've spoken about this in the past on other videos. Again, this is embedded in my template. So if you cop the template, you get this information, you get these settings. Obviously you don't get the plugins, you need to buy the plugins, but you know, you'll have all of this programmed in. So at first I've got Spectre here, and this is basically lined up on like 30% mix, and I've just done I've just done a Q all the way across, saturating everything by 1 dB, and that's just giving a bit of color to all of the drums, giving a bit of saturation. I love how it sounds, gives it a little bit of grit, and it's on 30% mix, so it's nothing crazy. And then I have my Shadow Hills compressor here. I've spoken about this a lot. With my J pre, again, this comes preloaded in my template, and
We got AKs, Glocks, we ain't on
giving
game. Waste man.
a small bit of compression and color to the drums, mostly working here. So for our main kick drum, I'm making sure this is hitting -1. That's my go-to spot. So if my kick drum is hitting -1, I know that it's gonna be going into my master chain and everything else in the right way, and then that's basically my indication that I'm starting my mix in the right place with my kick drum. So I always start with my kick drum, you know, do all my mixing, and then level it up, so then I'm hitting with these settings on -1. I know the rest of the mix is gonna get set.
Back wheel, cause I love the thrill. Gonna bass games cause I love the drill.
Obviously, as I said, as I always say, because I know I have guys in the comments that's most of the time. That can change, that does change, right? It's not a preset or whatever, but those are the settings that I feel, and the system that I've made that seems to really work for me, and I know works for a lot of other people as well, some of the biggest and most successful engineers in the world. So before you start at me in the comments, you know, it's tried and true, and there's no wrong answers to this either. So that's my drums. Let's jump into the instrumental, try to get through this, as you know, in a reasonable time, so we're not here for hours. With this, we had a lot of basses. So originally the basses were this bass and this bass, I believe, and obviously this bass here, and it was, you know, just aggressive with a kind of like housey almost bass going on. So that's the aggressive one, you can hear it. That's a bit more like the dancey, I don't know what you'd call that, maybe it's like a hollow bass. And then you got the aggressive grimy bass, and then you have the aggressive grimy bass here, which again was one of the things that we were working through on the mix. Like I might have had it in a slightly different position, but turns out they wanted it like that, and it does sound good to me, so I'm happy with how it's all come out. But we had a fair bit of basses to try and manage, so because then we also had this sub bass here, which you can see is really low in the mix. I've got an EQ on it, and we've got our Soothe 2, which is connected to my kick drum. So every time this kick drum hits, it's going to duck the low frequencies here, basically allowing us that space in the mix, allowing the bass and the kick to cut through, but not sort of like overwhelm the stereo out when it all hits at once. It's allowing things to breathe, it's allowing things to have its moment, which is going to build us headroom, dynamics. It's going to allow you to hear the kick over the bass, and it's going to give us that edge at the end when we can really like help push the volume, and we've not just like peaked and squashed the whole mix. So if I play it with this kick drum, you'll see it triggering it. Again, all of these settings are locked in the template for you to play around with and use if you want to get it. And you know, you can hear this bass, just super low, super subby, almost difficult to hear, but obviously I had to balance it with all of these other bass lines, and the main cellos are quite subby as well, so there was a lot of low end in this song. Obviously next I've mixed in, let's keep the drums playing, and next I've mixed in with the sub of this bass line here. Again, it would be a very similar process. With this one, I have added a multi-band just to add a little bit of control between the two low and mids of this bass, because it's quite high up. It has that kind of like pingy sound. So this is just like really tight on the low end, like basically keeping it as tight as possible so it doesn't sound muddy, and then a slightly looser one at the top so it can kind of ping through and flutter at that top end, which I liked. Soothe 2 again, just doing that same thing with the kick. And then we have gold clip track as well, with a bit of clipping, very low mix, 13%, but just giving it a little bit of clipping, allowing that bass to cut through, giving it a bit of sharpness, bit of saturation, bit of color. You know the drill by now. Then we have this aggressive bass, which is sort of like the main driving bass of the song. This obviously I have shaved off a bit of the low end because I've sort of given it to this bass and the sub, and then I'm just allowing this to kind of like act as like a mid driving force for the bass to come through and really be aggressive. I do have the Soothe 2 on there just in case, just catching any of those kick drums just in case, but it shouldn't really be catching anything with all that cut out. Another multi-band, this is obviously just in this low pocket here. I've boosted it for whatever reason, but it's tight, just again controlling the sub, and then a bit of compression in that mid-range just to make sure that it's like coming out consistently and smoothing and being smooth, with almost parallel settings but a little bit more gold, Lavery Gold harmonics coming through on the gold clip, creating a, you know, drive and color again to the sound, just all about drive and color. And then there'll be almost parallel settings for this, but just a slightly different gain structure, as this is the same bass but just like replayed. And the same for this on this bass here, just a slightly different like play version of it. So let's listen to all those basses together with the drums. So sounds tight, sounds aggressive, sounds balanced. The only thing, again, I probably would do in hindsight, listening to this mix again, and this is something that us mix engineers are always going to be doing, are always going to be thinking about, is I probably would have wanted a little bit more sub in there, maybe just a little bit more sub. But, you know, again, the song's out now, it's been approved. That would have just been my preference. I think every engineer is always kind of like wanting to tweak. But yeah, so this is essentially the bed of the whole song. You know, this is what the whole tune's built around. So once I had this, you know, the rest of the mix is mostly easy. The next big thing I guess we have to cover is the main samples, which are these cello samples. You know, if you're I'll have to try and I'll ask my brother, he'll know the original sample, but this is, I believe, is a sample from an original grime song. He's much more clued up. I'm big into grime, but he you know, he's like a cyclopedia of grime knowledge. So in fact, let me try and call him now and just see if he can tell me.
Hello?
Yo, I'm just recording a video for my YouTube on the Sleep song, the new Charlie Sloth and Giggs tune. Who made the, what was the original sample from?
What, the actual...
The cello, the cello.
Tune? What?
The cello line, yeah, like the actual tune, this line.
Yeah, it's Danny Weed and Cage, but it was mainly Danny Weed.
Danny Weed and Cage. And what do you know what the tune was called? Creeper. Okay, appreciate that. Yeah. Well, there you go, guys. My brother's told you. I'll have his Instagram link below, and you can go and follow him up because he's got no followers. Nice one. I better go. I've got to finish recording this in a bit. Cheers. Bye. Okay, there you go. So it's Creeper by Danny Weed. I'll try and find a link below if you haven't heard it, but that was the original sample. And then obviously, yeah, Charlie's done like a refix of this and remade it, restructured it, reproduced it. So let's have a check what I've done here. So obviously on the bus, I've just added this mag EQ, clearly just to add like a little bit of like EQing and brightness overall to this mix. I really like the mag EQ, can't recommend it enough. It's from Plug-in Alliance. And then all of these will be the same. I would have affected them all the same. And essentially what we have here is a Pro Q3. This is just top and tailing, and then I'm just widening the mid band. So this is where most of the vocals are going to sit, and I've chunked out a lot of the mid and then spread it slightly on the sides, which is going to widen the sound, give it a bit more width, and allow the vocals to sit in the middle so they're not clashing. That's a mid-side technique. And then we have a multi-band here, which is just controlling, boosting some of the low end, but keeping it tight. Let's see how this is reacting. So yeah, super tight on the low end, slightly slightly looser on the mid and just balancing it. I've boosted it later on because Gigs wanted a bit more like body to the cello, wanted it to sound a little bit more like full and oomphy. And then we just have like a light bit of compression happening here, keeping it consistent so it's driving through. It's grime at the end of the day. Like a lot of people, you know, would be loose with the compression on strings, but this being grime and everything being like forced and aggressive, you do want to like get it pushed and get it like not flat but like consistent. And I've chosen to go with the LA2A here because I like the width and the color, and it's kind of like, you know, it's got a nice tone to it, and it isn't as tight and as aggressive as some other compressors. So yeah, very loose there. And then we have, that's basically all the strings. You know, there's a few other strings, but they'll be doing the same thing.
Like Uncle Phil on the back wheel, cause I love the big spit is just out looking for some.
And then we have, let me get these re-soloed so we're not hearing the vocals just yet. Then we have some other little perks. I believe this actually is like meant to be in the drums. Yeah, so there's actually like just some like perks, hats, sort of things going through. By the time I got to it, it was already in there, so I sort of just mixed it in there, you know, just for speed and convenience. But that should have really been in the drums. Hence why I said at the beginning, this is exactly how I left it and how these mixes can go sometimes. Why it's, again, it's important to have a good template because it minimizes stuff like that from happening. And then obviously if we go back up, we have a couple of little things here. So just some other little perks, little samples and sounds just running through again. I haven't even added anything to it, just a little boop, just leveled it. We've got another little sound there, just a go. Again, just a bit of EQ and leveling. This is what this, you know, you don't need to be too crazy with everything when it comes to this stuff. And then we have obviously this sound, which is basically a added violin sample that goes on top. Nothing crazy there, sort of like kept it similar to how I've mixed the violins. Then we have the sleep sample, again just EQ,
Sleep,
and some reverb, giving it a bit of space.
Sleep.
You know, I've given it a really tight EQ on the reverb, just keeping that space there so it doesn't get over muddy. We actually changed the sample a couple of times to find the right one. There was a bunch of different versions of that sound until we found the one that we liked. Hence why, you know, it isn't like a stem. I've actually like recut it and positioned it for Charlie after the, you know, a bunch of different versions. And then yeah, just a few extra little sounds here. So we've got like a sword and another like the go echo basically. And again, nothing crazy, a little bit of EQ, a little bit of reverb on the go. The sword is basically dry, it's just been leveled. So just trying to keep it simple. So that was our instrumental. So we can just give you a little play of all of that so you can hear it.
Sleep.
You know, the idea is it sounds very ignorant, everything is heard, everything's got its place, it's super sort of like, you know, there's nothing really hidden, it's just, it's raw and what it is. So it's, you know, that's kind of like, you know, what that UK grimy, I mean, it isn't really grime, it's a bit faster than grime as well, it's nearly 150, but like that's what that sound is all about for me anyway. So that's what I've tried to encapsulate. That's the instrumental basically. Sounds great. Let's look at how I approach the vocals, which is probably why a lot of you guys have come here and watched this video. So as you can see, in terms of the foldering and the buckets that they're in, I have an overarching stack for all the vocals, which have both two more stacks with all of Mazza's parts in, and then all of Giggs's parts in, and then we just have Charlie's like call out tags here. And then the only thing that I've actually activated on the bus, which is just a bit of Spectre, just giving it a little boost, which I would have thought, you know, the vocals need overall, after I'd finished sort of mixing everything, just to get them into the mix, no compression or anything like that. So here we have Mazza's vocals. Now, had a small issue with Mazza's vocals, hence why they've been separated here. This last one is just because they wanted a filter when we did this cut here, because it's sort of like a repeat bar. But essentially there was like an issue with the recording, and for whatever reason we couldn't get it re-recorded. So I had to separate them and do the best I could, you know, and luckily I managed to get it to a point where everyone was happy with it and it doesn't notice that much in the song. You know, in an ideal world I would have had the opportunity to you know, get Mazza to re-record it, or I come and re-record it I re-record him. But essentially this is what happened. The first 8 is all fine, but there's a glitch in the recording.
Still, she just said yes, and she always will.
Let me solo it so you can hear it.
She always will, running up the hill, like Jack and Jill. If you don't get him, then the tracker will. I'm like Liam.
Yeah, you can hear there's a lot of like feedback, distortion, clipping, whatever it is. But essentially I've separated it because I wouldn't want to put this on the whole recording, especially the good parts of the recording. I've separated the damaged parts and added RX decrackle. I tried a bunch of different RX plugins to try and minimize it, but this seemed to do the job the best. Obviously when it's still solid you can still hear it, but it does minimize it quite a lot. And then once it goes onto once it's in the mix, it does disguise it quite a lot. But now I've pointed it out, you're probably going to hear it now.
If she loves me still, she just said yes, and she always will, running up the hill, like Jack and Jill. If you don't get him, then the tracker will. I'm like Liam Neeson, got tracking skills.
So there's a few bits there that still poke out, but it has disguised it quite a lot. So yeah, as I said, we kind of ran with that. But anyway, that was the fix. Let's go into the vocals. So basically I have all of Mazza's main vocals going into like one chain, being shared a lot, and then there'll be just adjustments, different sends, different volumes for other things, slight EQ for his stabs and stuff. But essentially what I've done with his vocals is, and we'll break it all down, we have a Pro Q3 here. Now again, just due to the quality of the recording where Mazza's recorded it, he's you know, I'm not 100% sure, but I think he's fairly sort of like new to, you know, this level of recording anyway. So it's not the same as what Giggs would send over, for instance, but still, you know, we do what we can, we make what we work, and we've got to make sure that you guys as the listener, you know, don't notice that difference. So I've had to do a fair bit of EQing. This is way more than what I normally would do, and I'd normally look at this and be like, oh my god, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. But I've just tried to balance it and adjust it in the best way I can, trying to remove any of these harsh frequencies that are like popping through in the room that it's been recorded in. Then we have S-Split. This is a brilliant Split S. Sorry, this is a brilliant plugin. It's a de-esser, but it doesn't de-ess using compression. It like physically grabs the S's and like almost like clip gains them within the plugin. It's quite CPU intensive, but you know, if you nail these settings, it's by far the best splitter. And I know, you know, countless engineers that would back that. Then we have a multi-band here. This is, you know, tightening up the low end, giving it a bit more body, you know, soft compression on the mid, and then we have a bit more of an aggressive compression on the top end. Again, just attacking those S's and softening those S's, and then a slight boost to give it a bit of brightness on the multi-band. Probably my favorite, most used compressor here, the 1176. I use the bluey, sometimes I use the black one, but this one's great. I like the attack and release settings, especially for rap vocals, give it a nice aggressive, punchy, grabby feel to it. And then I've used the mag EQ, again one of my favorite EQs, especially for getting that bright top end out, and then I've given it a bit of a boost again around the low mids to give the vocal a bit more body. Black box, goes on a lot of my vocals, great for saturation, just mixing it in quite chill amounts, you know, using the pentode to sort of like grab the mid of the vocal and make that a little bit more prominent. And then I've just softened the triode to take some of the aggression away from the very top. I'm not even sure if that's how they work, but that's how my ears work when listening to them. So yeah, these are my black box settings for this vocal, and then I've mixed it down a little bit. Again, just color, you know, saturation. I've spoken about all this stuff on videos all over my channel. And then finally, another bit of soothe too. So a lot of vocal correction, just trying to be as simplistic as I possibly can do when it comes to like creating color and body, and just you know, relying on my EQ and relying on my ears just to make sure I'm getting the balance across in terms of like how he sounds and how he sits on the record. And then this is basically just that last you know, defense line, just getting rid of any sort of like annoying harmonics or things that are popping out too much running through his vocals. In terms of the effects chain, if I click this, we can see we have a parallel compressor being run, the Fairchild, love this, good settings, picked this up from a Mix by Ali tutorial years and years and years ago, and I've sort of been leaning on it ever since. It's very good grabbing the vocal and really helping it cut through the mix and making sure you can hear every word clearly. Then we have the Valhalla reverb settings, and then obviously I've done a really tight EQ, just want this little pocket. EQ your reverbs, people. And then same sort of thing, but just a different style, just creating sort of like a, you know, a plate of different reverbs and sounds and giving it its own space and room. And I've used the UAD pure plate for this. I like this, I love this plate, and I love it in combination with the Valhalla. You're going to hear that on a lot of my mixes. And then again, slightly wider EQ, just giving it a little bit more breathing space, bringing in a little bit more of the body from the plate reverb, but you know, not using as much of it. So let's have a listen to that vocal and with all of that in context, and you can hear how it sounds.
My bro, don't sleep. Hey, yo, sleep. Hey, Charlie Sloth, play the beat. I hit the ops, I got it on repeat.
Well, A-B.
When you run the streets.
I'll A-B it for you, so I'll turn off all the plugins and turn them on again.
20 run the streets, like the corner, I got sweets. If I reach the top, then it's peak. Hey, I just made a meal like I'm me. Hey, counting money in my sleep. Like Chief Keef, I play for keeps. What's 100 bag? I want 100 mil, bro. Can't sleep, but I'd love to chill till I've got a mansion like Uncle Phil on the back wheel, cause I love the thrill. Got a bike games cause I love to drill. I got little hitters with big spitters just out looking for some blood to spill. Call of Duty cause they love to kill. I drink AU cause I love to still. Had to ask keys.
So yeah, not the best quality recording, as I said, but you know what we was delivered, and we did what we had to do to, you know, get it over the line and get it you know, as good, as best sounding as possible. Giggs' vocal, it's going to be a fairly similar chain, but a lot less correction involved. We'll go over to his verse now. The hook is essentially just, you know, Mazza's done his own hook, and then what we've done in post is taken some of Giggs's lines from his verse and added them into the hook, so there's a balance of the two in there. So that's why you can see that. That's how we built that. That was done after Giggs sent the vocals. So with Giggs again, we have his vocal chain, everything going in. You know, Giggs is a very simplistic artist. There's a lot of power in his vocals. He likes to keep things, you know, he doesn't like to overcomplicate things with loads of ad-libs and stabs and stuff like that. So, you know, it's all about getting that power and that dominance out of his one single vocal, which I like working like that, and I think that's an effective way of working. So what we have here, small EQ, again, just little tightenings with a dynamic EQ, correcting certain frequencies that might have been popping out too much for my ear. S split again, slightly different settings, but great. Split S, I always do that. But again, a great plugin, a great alternative to a de-esser. It is a de-esser, but it's not, and if you know what I mean. It doesn't work like a de-esser, but it's doing the same thing. Then we have my multiband here. Obviously, you can see here where I've done some correctioning. Like Giggs has a lot of body in his vocals already, so there wasn't the need to do that boost. Just tightening it. I like to tighten rather than just cutting all that EQ out. You see where people do like a shelf in the low mids on the vocals. I'm not a big fan of that. I like to just to tighten it and keep the energy there. I might do some adjustments later on, like the mag or something, but anyway. And then just a small boost, but still quite light compression on the mids, and a bit tighter, but a bit more of the high end. I felt the need to pull it back to the 5K mark. I think that's just where some of his like sibilants were really poking out, because again, he's got a lower tone to his vocal. Again, we got the, you know, faithful 1176 running here, tight compression, just really driving it, forcing it, getting it out, getting it solid. Mag EQ, got a boost around the low mids, and then we've got a nice little shelf around the top, just bringing out that shine, that top end. If you haven't used the mag for top end, I'd highly suggest it. It's a brilliant sound. It's got a brilliant sound. And then finally, well, we have a slightly different order this time. I've used the Soothe 2 here, just in terms of some soft correctioning, and then I've gone and added the black box as sort of probably an afterthought, just wanting a little bit more aggression, a little bit more sound. There's a lower mix even still on this, even less sort of usage of it, probably due to the microphone choice that Giggs has used is already kind of like bright and colourful. So yeah, then we have that, and then same again. These will be the exact same shed with Mazza, trying to keep that space and that room alive for the two vocalists, because they're both rapping. They're not doing two different things like singing and rapping. Like you know, I'd always go try share the room, give them a similar space, and then add anything else if I feel like I need it. But same parallel compression with the Fairchild. Then we have the same reverb and the same plate, maybe a little bit different amounts of them. But let's have a play of that and we can A/B it. So play it with the beat.
We got AKs, Glocks, we ain't on games. Waste man, you can't be saved. Tommy Ghost, you ain't no Canaan. Bow, bow, a flock of flaming. Life's good, I ain't complaining. We got AKs, Glocks, we ain't on games. Waste man, you can't be saved. Tommy Ghost, you ain't no Canaan. Bow, bow, a flock of flaming. Life's good, I ain't complaining. Suit and tie, and I'm Bruce Wayne. Big shells in them containers. Takes big feet to fill them trainers. Not like I'm the bailiff. Bob Marley and my whalers with my shooters and my cruisers.
So there's a few things to point out there. Obviously, firstly, you can hear the difference in the quality of the recording between Giggs and Mazza. Again, not trying to, you know, diss Mazza or anything in the slightest, just the facts of it. It's a lot cleaner of a recording. So it didn't have to do as much. And I've been listening to Giggs since I was a kid. So I know how he wants his vocals to sound. You know, even though this is the first time I've mixed his vocals, he didn't have any notes on the vocals whatsoever. It was just a few changes to the instrumental. And you know, for me, simplicity is key. Just don't overcook it. You can hear, like, it's just all I'm doing is just trying to enhance it a little bit, clean it up, and then give it a bit more brightness, a little bit more color, and giving it a room. Haven't tried anything too crazy, you know, mental. I've delivered it and it's worked, you know. And then the only other thing, probably a note, is that I added this little vocal stutter here in the hook just to give it a bit of dynamics.
We got
that was a request from Charlie Sloth himself.
Waste man, you can't be asleep.
Just helping the bounce. And then finally we have these taglines, which I've just done a bit of EQ to, because you know they're already been compressed and affected a million times at this point, and it's just to sort of like, you know, let people know that this is a Charlie Sloth song. And yeah, then obviously from there it was just deliverables, approval, and we knocked it out of the park, and the tune's doing amazing. Let me give you just a little playthrough from like halfway through the hook to Giggs' verse, so you can just hear it, listen to it, and hear everything, you know, reflect on everything that I've spoken about in terms of the mix. Oh, I guess I'll talk about a little bit about my mastering chain. It's not totally relevant because we're talking about the mix breakdown, but essentially it's being run through my Shadow Hills compressor, different settings to the drum bus, very light settings, just sort of shaving off some of those peaks. Then it goes into the stereo black box with this sort of like stereo sculptor unit here. I kind of do a bit of sculpting, widening and monoing in the low end, but this is run on a parallel, and is, you know, it's not doing a lot. It's just giving me a little bit of volume and a little bit of color, but you know, you can overuse that box on your master. Again, very minimal clipping going on, just little bits, just giving it a boost. I love the sound of this. It goes on everything. The gold clip, this is the full version of gold clip. In the previous tracks, it's been the gold clip track, which is like the stripped down, less CPU intensive version of this, but massive plug-in. This, if you need it, if you're in the market for a new clipper, this is the one you want to get. Shout out Ryan Schwab. And then from there, another little bit of color making, just a bit of brightness on the top end, tiny little bit, not even a dB, with the Spectre at 50% mix on that top 10K. Then just a small bit of EQing, final EQing. Here I picked this up from Curtis, you know, around that 14K, 13K mark, there's these sharp frequencies that can come out when you're doing a lot of boosting. And, you know, we found just slicing out a thin part around that frequency can really help with like just it being a little bit overbearing, just helps soften it. I think a lot of people's ears seem to be sharp at that point, and then just a little bit of just, you know, ducking and diving here and there, just balancing out the song. And then lastly, going into gold particle, which stayed on. This was my driving force. This is where I was getting my volume, a little bit of color. It was being mixed in the whole time anyway. As long as I was in these parameters, then I knew I was safe. Not really done too much adjustment on the multi-band, maybe just a little bit, just to help balance and hit these parameters properly. And then finally, you know, this is off now, but I run into this to get my meterings, making sure I'm getting a decent LUFS. Not that that matters too much, as long as it sounds good and it's, you know, loud, but we do want it to sort of hit certain areas. I'm aiming anywhere from like, you know, 9 to 7, 6, but you know, as I said, please don't hold on to those numbers because they don't really mean too much, but it is a good idea. You know, it's nice to have a rough idea, and especially getting your dynamics. And then I can also have a quick reference using this codec emulator of what it's going to sound like on Spotify and YouTube, stuff like that. Make sure it's not going to sound absolute shit when it gets run through their codecs and uploaded, which is very useful. And if I need it, I can always upload a reference there as well. But yeah, that's essentially the master chain. So let's just have a quick listen.
And then a track of will, I'm like Liam Neeson, got tracking skills. Last night did I get no
Sleep, one tweet can make you sleep.
no rest for the wicked, I get no sleep.
Red dots, you know them sleep.
Don't talk on me name, I'm put them to sleep.
Waste man, you can't be sleep.
They woke on the streets, my bro, don't sleep.
We got AKs, Glocks, we ain't on games. Waste man, you can't be saved. Tommy Ghost, you ain't no Canaan. Bow, bow, a flock of flame.
Yeah. As I said, I won't play too much fix. Try not to get this video demonetized, but the likelihood of that is slim. But yeah, that is essentially the mix. That's how I approached it. I really did enjoy working on this record. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe, give it a like. It does really help. I'm releasing videos like this all the time. I'm trying to sort of, you know, give you guys real songs that you guys are listening to, that I'm mixing, and do these feedbacks whenever I can. I'm also doing, you know, tutorials on plugins and reviews, and I have the podcast Unsung. You can go over to the Audio Movers YouTube channel for that. That's weekly episodes with some of the best engineers, producers, artists in the game. And yeah, check all that stuff out. Like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. As I said, I hope you've enjoyed the video. And if you want the template, click the link below. Get this template, using the same template I do and the recording template. And yeah, let me know in the comments as well if there's like any other songs that you know that I've mixed that you'd like to hear, or you know, some tips or anything that, obviously because I just did a rough overview, you know, here where maybe you want me to go into a little bit more detail of my thought process or an actual tutorial on certain techniques. Let me know in the comments. I'm always there, I'm always watching. On that note, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Safe.